What is up, legends? Welcome back to another episode of the On Becoming Legend podcast, where every week it is my job to help you live a legendary life in whatever way you define it. I do this by bringing you content and lessons from my own life and also interviews with legendary people so you can learn from our stories and our mistakes and avoid making them in your own life. This week, I'm interviewing the legendary Tim Walbridge. Tim is the president and founder of 503 Motoring Companies, My Fives, and InsertGuruHere. Tim, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So the first question I'd like to lead with, college. Did you go, and why or why not?
I did not go to college.
All right.
I grew up in a small town over in Eastern Oregon, and college was not really pressed. My father had gone to college. My mom did not go to college. College wasn't really pressed upon us. And, I wasn't as many entrepreneurs. I wasn't the best student. So I kind of couldn't wait to get out of high school. So.
Yeah, and so you graduated, early 90s, right? And then
93.
503 started in 2001. So what did that interim look like? And I'm really curious to kind of hear about how that fostered the, sort of the origin story for 503.
Let's see. So instead of going to college, I decided to take the military route. My brother had gone into the military and passed away a few years prior to that. So it was still very, very fresh in my mind about, the adventures he had and what have you. So I decided to go the military route, got out of high school, literally that July, went to boot camp down in San Diego, came home for a quick minute, went back. And then in January of 94, I was overseas. Unfortunately I was part of the business that was over in Mogadishu. So I got a crash course on the world pretty quick at a very young age. I stayed in Southern California for a few years. Have always been into cars, so that kind of has always just kind of followed me around. Got even more heavily into cars in the car scene down in Southern California, and then missed my folks, moved back up to Oregon, still working with cars in and around cars, and kind of started building some cars for people, modifying, customizing them. Fast forward up to 2001, I was working for an auto body shop. I think I was 24 years old, I guess, at the point there. And, I was making almost $100,000 a year. Couldn't go any farther than where I was, without kind of getting into management, which was a pay cut. Wasn't really interested in that at that age. Just started a family and, was kind of growing tired of the corporate world and thought, if I don't do this now, I'm probably never going to do it. And I think back on that thought now, I can vividly remember having that thought, but I don't know why. I don't know what was leading me. Again, I didn't have any business experience. I didn't go to college. I didn't take business classes, nothing. And just decided to do it. So I quit my job, started my business, and bought a house all in 45 days. So the day that I was going to sign the paperwork on my house, I was actually walking out the door of my W-2 job. And the bank had called, they do the one last call to make sure that you have a job before you come in and sign your papers. And I'm walking out the door and they're waving at me. And my manager at the time was on the phone, like, yeah, oh yeah, no, he works here. Yep. Good. So it all just worked. It all just happened. I don't really know how. I wish I could say I had a plan, or I wish I could say that, it's like, a lot of people read about you're supposed to have a business plan and all this other stuff, but the reality of it is it went exactly how most people's does, and I didn't have a plan. I just went. So
yeah, it's funny you say that. So I'm actually kind of the opposite. So I did the military later in life, but it was a similar thought of like, man, if I don't do this now, I'm not going to get to do it. So I was 26 before I left and went to basic training for the Army.
Wow.
Yeah,
you wanted to go in the military.
I did, yeah. No, I'd always wanted to be special operations ranger, something like that. And so I joined the Army and then eventually went on a BSF. But I was super old. I was like a grandfather in my basic training class, like married, just like completely different life phase than a lot of those.
Yeah.
And so you did so was it Marines?
No, I was actually Navy.
Navy, man.
Yep.
Southern California, that's not bad living, even if it is where you're doing basic training.
It wasn't bad living. But, again, at 19 years old, I don't know if you know where Pendleton, Oregon is, but it's a little tiny town in Eastern Oregon. And that we're best known for our rodeo. It's humongous. Pendleton Roundup is huge, right?
Yeah, because your high school mascot's the Buckaroo, right?
It was, yeah. Nice job. Yeah. So, up until I'm 45 now, and up until the last couple of years, I really just I was glad to be out of that town. I didn't really talk about it. A few years ago, I took the kids back. They had gone, my parents still lived there for a number of years, and so they had gone when they were really little. I took them back just a few years ago, and we actually did all the touristy things and stuff. And I was like, this place isn't so bad if you don't live here. So,
right.
so that was kind of my, inoculation to the world, was going straight into a gigantic 800-foot long ship, and cruising around the world. So,
yeah. And so what was your MOS? What was your job in the Navy?
I was an aviational bosun's mate, which is really just fancy talk for a airplane valet. So
Okay.
I worked in the hangar bay of the LHA-5 Peleliu, which is now retired since. And we basically had the Aviates, 46s and 53s, big helicopters. And we just worked in the hangar bay, bringing them and parking them and making sure they were safe.
Nice.
Real riveting work here.
So, yeah, I mean, what was the decision like for you when you opted to get out of the Navy? I mean, obviously you didn't start with the, you didn't kind of know what you wanted to do until later. So I'm just curious how you made that decision when it came time to either get out or stay in.
It actually wasn't a tough decision at all. I mean, I knew as soon as I got in that it was not for me. How do I best say this? Structure has not always been my best friend, right? So, it wasn't bad, right? But being stuck on a ship with 5,000 other dudes was tough. Being away from my family at a young age was tough. There was just a lot of things I didn't agree with. And then some things that I saw while I was in the military just really kind of didn't leave the best taste in my mouth for private versus public sector, right?
Right.
So I had an opportunity once we got back from sea. I was in a little over 2 years. I got an opportunity when we got back to sea to transfer over to an officer's squadron over on Coronado Island. Super, super cool. Got to wear my dress whites all day.
Nice.
Didn't really do anything because we just sat there waiting for the officers to come and go. And then I got an opportunity about 6 months later to get a early exit with a severance pay. And I was like, yep, I'll take that. Thank you. I got out. I stayed in San Diego I got out in 95. I stayed out in San Diego probably 2 years and then decided to come home. It was an interesting stint.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's interesting you say that about structure. Cause I think I am a very structured person, but even for me, I like to be in charge of my structure. I want to be the one creating the structure. I don't want somebody else to hand it to me and say, hey, do exactly what I say all the time. So yeah, I can definitely relate to
that. I guess I can elaborate on that. That's probably a better description of it. I think that's why we are entrepreneurs. But when someone else is in charge of your structure, and I can remember there was you could go to college and then you could come into the military, and you'd come in as basically a bull ensign, which is like a junior lieutenant. Mm-hmm. And I can remember being on the ship and some of these bull ensigns coming in. I'm pretty sure it's what they call them, right? Bull ensigns, I think. Yeah.
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah, they would come in and they'd literally walk in with their books in their hand, be like, okay, guys, it's time to do this. And the chief petty officers and stuff, some of the salty dogs, the guys have been in for 20, 30 years, are like, if we do it that way, you're going to kill people. So it was also an interesting lesson in educated versus real life experience and how that associates to your actual day-to-day job and safety. So it was interesting.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. And I guess we probably should back up a little bit for anybody that doesn't know what 503 is. Why don't you talk a little bit about 503 Motoring Companies and help people kind of understand what it is you do over there?
So I started 503 Motoring. 503 is our area code, for those of you that are curious what 503 is. I get people local that say, hey, what's 503 mean? And I'm like, our area code. I started it in 2001. I actually originally started the company as TRW Motorsports. That's my initials, TRW. And we are a custom shop. I started in my garage doing window tinting, paint protection films, little tiny, gadgety type stuff. And then TRW, which if any of you know the automotive space at all, is the company that builds seat belts, lights, lamp housings, all these little pieces and parts for cars. So they sent me a cease and desist letter to no longer be operating under my own initials. So I remember calling the lady on the letter, and I was so confused. Like, why couldn't I use they're my initials? Why can't I use them? And the lady was so funny because she obviously could tell I didn't know shit, didn't know anything, and was real green. And she says, well, hon, unfortunately we own the rights to that name, so you can't use that. And so here I am at, I think what was I guess 24 years old or so. And I'm like, I don't know what to do now. I got to change my name. She goes, well, how much do you think it would cost you to change your name and stuff? And I thought about it for a minute. I go, I bet it's going to cost me like $1,000. She goes, okay, we'll have a check in the mail to you tomorrow. I want to check back. So they literally paid me to change my name. So anyway, moved forward as 503 Motoring. And at the time, there were a couple other area code / motoring companies that were really in the public eye. And I really was enamored by what they were doing at the level they were doing it at. So, we kind of took that under our wings as well. And then within about 4 years, about 3 years actually, we had enough business generated from dealerships doing paint protection film, window tinting, vinyl work, and a little bit of detailing that we needed to get a brick and mortar. So we walked into actually the space that I'm in currently right now in 2004. And it was originally about 2,500 square feet. And I remember walking into the space going, there's no way I'm going to fill this. This is way more than I need. Like this, this is crazy. I don't know why I'm doing this. But again, it just did it. I worked it, now we're in, I think 13,000 feet total. So,
wow.
Yeah. So big difference. Yep.
So where did your interest in cars start? I mean, was this something that did this run in the family? Have you been doing it since you were a kid, or did you get introduced to it later? How did that happen?
I can't pinpoint where as a child I began. I mean, obviously most young guys like cars, right?
Right.
We all had cars and G.I. Joes and Star Wars toys growing up.
Yeah.
And so I don't really know. I don't know exactly when I was like, oh, I want to do something with cars. I just know that out of all my toys, my Hot Wheels were my favorite. And then of course, there came the calendar girls on cars, and, everybody had the Kathy Ireland picture on her wall and right. Pamela Anderson. I think I still have those posters, by the way, somewhere. So I can't pinpoint where exactly, but I just know as I got into my early teens, it just grew stronger and stronger and stronger. And so I got my first car at 14. It was a 68 Volkswagen Bug. I paid $400 for it. I pushed it home.
Deal.
And, nobody in my family was really car guys. My brother, before he had passed away, tinkered on his car, and I can remember him being out working on his motors at night. So I just kind of started working on them. And I never was really a mechanical guy. Like I didn't really care about making them faster. I just wanted to make them look good. Right.
Right.
So it was always aesthetic for me. And that just never went away. I mean, once I got my first car, that was it. I mean, there's never been a period in my life where I haven't had a few cars, and there's never been a period in my life when I haven't been doing something to a car. So it's definitely ingrained in me somehow. But I've never really been able to figure out what the launch point was of that.
Yeah. So I'm curious in the motorsports world, is that kind of a divide that people walk? Like you have people who are more aesthetics and want it to look cool and be tricked out. And then you have the guys who don't really care what it looks like. They just want it to go faster, harder.
Yeah. No. And it's interesting that you asked that question, because it took me, I'm not even joking, about 17 years of owning and running these businesses to really understand those divides and understand that 503 Motoring, we don't take care of the track guys, the guys that necessarily want to go really fast, the guys that are on the internet every day, the guys that are in the forums every day, the guys that are in their garages, ordering some parts online we don't really take care of those guys. We've always really taken care of, CEOs, tastemakers, athletes, people that love what we do and how we do it. Mm-hmm. Somebody who may have their own kind of style or swagger, but they don't really know how to transfer that over to the automotive space. And so aesthetic has always been my angle. And again, I didn't really realize it till about 3-4 years ago. And all of a sudden dawned on me, I'm like, why don't we have, I think we were having a meeting. I'm like, why don't we have more track guys in here? Why don't we have more performance stuff in here? And I'm thinking, well, because that's not my passion. It's not what I want to do. It's not where I am. So obviously the people that are coming in here are people that are feeding off of my passion, So really interesting that it even took me 17 years to understand, but there is definitely a hard line between those two. When you get into the exotic space, which we deal and have dealt with for quite a few years, when you get into that space, there's definitely a molding between those, the aesthetic and performance, that we bounce between. But when it comes to the hardcore performance, quarter mile guys, it's just not really our thing.
So what is that for a layman like me? When you say exotic, what does that mean exactly in terms of cars?
I mean, you're talking Lamborghini, Ferrari. Porsche has a few models that are designated exotic. You could talk Bentley, Rolls Royce. Typically it's going to be anything that's over a couple $100,000.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. So you talked a little bit about this being your passion and just, the thing that you love doing. And I watched a video of you, and you mentioned sort of the beginning of 503 was that in 2001, it just wasn't being done right, and that your focus is quality and customer service. And I'm just curious to hear you elaborate on it wasn't being done right. I mean, what was your experience back then with companies similar to yours, or where did you see the gap was that you just felt like, I got to step into this and do something about it?
Well, if we go back to the military conversation about structure and really not really wanting any but our own, I've always just seemed to have a very keen eye for the way things are put together, or how the way things are taken apart, and then how things are put back together, and that whole process. And if you kind of extrapolate that and look at that from a whole business standpoint, it's all the way down to how does the customer view you when you walk into your business? How is that customer treated the first interaction they have? How is their car treated once it's in your facility? I mean, there's so many different facets to that. But what I mean by things just weren't being done right is, and I will never forget this, this was really the reason that 503 Motoring exists, to be honest with you. I walked into a company here in town called Plus One Motorsports. Plus One Motorsports was like the shit. It was the place you went. Everybody knew about it. They had been around. I think at that point they'd been around for probably maybe 15 years or so. I mean, all the ball players went there, And so at the time I had a 325 M Sport, which looked like an M3. And I'd saved up a bunch of money, and I wanted these niche wheels so bad. And so I went walking in there, and I'm like, I'm going to get these wheels. I had a pocket full of cash, and I walked in there, and they just treated me like crap. They didn't, the service wasn't there, and I wasn't looking to have my butt kissed or anything like that. Like I just wanted to buy these wheels.
Right.
But it was kind of a big day for me. It was a lot of money. I felt good. And here I am going to this holy grail of places. And I just kind of felt like my money didn't matter. I felt like, I just didn't feel good. And so I literally turned around and walked out of there, and never went back in. And about 4 months later is when I started my business. So,
yeah. You're filling a gap. So, I mean, the rest is history, as they say. So obviously there's some other people that agreed that they needed a different level of service.
Well, they made it, I think, they made it to 22 years. And I specifically remember when they closed down, I apparently I don't remember it well enough because I don't remember the year, but it was probably, had to be in the mid 2000s, like maybe late 2008, 2009. Maybe it was that late. I don't know. I think it was before that. Anyway, but I remember thinking, okay, all I got to do is make it to 22 years. That's it. And so actually in August will be the start of our 20th year. So I'm going to pause this phone really quick.
Sure.
So in August will be the beginning of our 20th year. So, we're definitely, doing well. And, obviously, unfortunately, due to the COVID stuff, it's stopped what would be an 8-year run for us of just continued accelerating.
Oh, wow.
But we're still here. We're still going to make it. So 22 is the goal.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and if I remember correctly, you said you started in your garage, and I keep hearing you talk about paint protection film.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you explain what that is? Because it was not something I was familiar with until I'd seen some of these videos and kind of saw you applying it. How did you get your start there, and why there? Why was that the thing that you led with?
So when I originally started, I was doing some wheels and tires, some light aesthetic things for a couple guys behind the scenes, but I needed to figure out, okay, how can I leave this job that I'm being paid handsomely for? I've got benefits, I've got all this stuff. How can I afford and I don't want to make this sound like this big process I went through. It literally was like, what can I do that's going to make some money? Oh, I can do window tinting. So I literally learned how to window tint. And that's kind of what I started doing originally. When I first turned the keys on the house, was working in the garage, I was doing just window tinting. I had a couple clients that would get some wheels and tires here and there, but I wasn't doing any installing or any of that kind of stuff, right? And then I had this lady call me, and she had a Lexus RX. And it's the kind of mid-size SUV. And she said, I want you to put the window tinting on the front of my car. Me being an entrepreneur, I'm like, can I do that? I mean, maybe I can do that. And I said, well, can you elaborate? Like, do you want your headlights tinted, or can you elaborate on what you're trying to do? She goes, well, my friend got this product that keeps her car from rock chipping. And I was like, huh, yeah, I mean, well, let me get back to you on this one. So I got off the phone. I called a friend of mine and was like, hey, have you heard of this, paint protection film, whatever? And he was like, nah, I haven't really heard about it. Well, we were coming up on SEMA, which is the automotive industry's biggest trade show, and it's in Las Vegas every November. And so I went to SEMA. Well, I went into SEMA. I found the section where this paint protection guy was, and turns out he was from Linwood, Washington, which is just above me.
Nice.
Sat there almost the entire day talking to him, learning about it. And it was basically a urethane product that was, clear film that went over the front of the car and protected from rock chip. Now, me being super duper anal, hypercritical of things, I'm thinking, holy shit, this is brilliant, right? This is perfect. So this guy decides to take me under his arm. Again, just another kismet, like opportunity. And he's like, hey, you're in Portland. Why don't you come up to Linwood, spend a week with me, and I'll show you how this stuff works. So I went up to Linwood, spent a couple days with him, learned how to install it. Found out there was another installer just south of me in Salem that wasn't doing the best. And so I started contracting with him to have him. At the time, you could cut out the kits on a computer, right? And this was like
nice,
like sci-fi kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
Super high tech. And so I was ordering these kits from him, and still working out of my garage. I don't have it here. I just took it to the house. Do you guys have the nickel ads down there?
I don't know.
So I'm not sure how old you are, but when I was a kid, we had a thing called nickel ads. Literally had a big nickel on it, said the nickel on it. And it was like the classifieds for your local area. So
I've seen them. Yeah, I've seen those. The little freebies or what have you in like the stores.
Yeah. People with free wood or cars, whatever. It's just like
for sure.
Little classified section. So I took an ad out in the little nickel. I still have it, by the way. It's really funny.
Nice.
And so people were calling me for window tinting and things like this. And they would come over to my house. They would sit on my couch. I would make them coffee. And then I would work on their it was the funniest thing ever. And so I started doing this paint protection film. And I realized that the dealerships around town could benefit from having it done directly. And there was one guy who was ahead of me that was kind of doing this already. But I went in to George Stanley at Rasmussen BMW, and I sat down at his desk and I said, hey, I want to do this paint protection film. Mind you, I'd only done like 3 or 4 cars, right? So I walked in and just put the whole sack right on the table and was like, I want to do all your work for BMW. And he was like, well, we've got a really good guy right now, but if the opportunity arises, I'll give you a call. Thanks, kid. So I walked out of there feeling, pretty defeated. But a couple days later, he called me, and he's like, "Hey, I want to try you out. I just got a new. At the time, it would have been a 2002 BMW 540i Sport package. And so that car was shaped exactly like the BMW M5, which was very technical, very hard car, lots of curves, stuff like that.
Nice.
He says, "I'd like you to do my personal demo and see how you do." So I go running down there. He says, "I'm sorry we can't have you work here at the dealership, but we've got this parking lot you can work in if you'd like." So they put me in this little damp, dark, really dark little parking garage thing. And I'm working on a black car, which in the paint protection industry is the toughest car to do.
Yeah.
At the time, it was an extremely hard and technical car because of the way the bumpers worked and the way the mirrors were.
Right.
And I probably wasted about $600 in material trying to get this thing done. I spent all day long. And at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? It's not going to get any better than this. I'm just going to take it back and just, this is it. This is what I got.
Right.
So took it back up to him, gave it to him. I was like, here you go. This one's on the house because I just felt so bad about it. This one's on the house. Thank you. And sure enough, he called me back a couple days later, and we actually got all of his business. And they were my largest account for probably 12 years. They were my largest account. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I feel like saying you started in 2001 and then fast forwarding to you're 20 years old with your business now is really glossing over a lot. I mean, where, at what point, do you go from being the guy in the garage, having people on your couch, to having a 13,000 square foot place and hiring and firing and managing? I mean, where does all that knowledge come from, and what was that journey like for you?
The knowledge comes from knowing that it needs to be done and just going and figuring it out. I mean, they're, you know, I've been fortunate to have a couple mentors throughout my life. None of them were automotive guys. None of them were automotive space guys. None of them were automotive business guys. They were gentlemen that I liked how they conducted their business. I liked how they carried themselves. And I told myself, that's who I want to be, right? Mm-hmm. So if a problem arose, like in 2004, I hired my first employee, and I had just turned the keys on this space. Again, I've got like 2,500 square feet and like 2 cars in there. So
you've been working in a 10 by 10.
Oh yeah. In a garage or out of the back of an Astrovan. And I would go to the dealerships and do my work too. So I was at a Volvo dealership doing an on-site install, and they were doing like some elevator maintenance or something like that. It was super smoky, really, really loud. And I remember this kid walked over to me and he's like, hey, I don't know, you know, I'm over there installing the film. And he says, hey, I don't know if you need this, but here's some earplugs and a face mask. 20 years later, we're wearing them still. And I was so taken aback by his generosity. I was like, just started talking to him like, you know, hey, what do you do here? It turns out he's a detailer and stuff. And I said, you know, have you ever thought about doing something different? And he was like, I mean, sure, why not? So I ended up hiring him on the spot, stole him from the dealership. And that's actually how I got my first 4 employees, is that I would pick them from the dealerships I was working at. Yeah. And then I built this little crew here. Had no idea about payroll, had no idea about benefits. Right. Just, you know, you just kind of go as you go. So, but yeah, fast forwarding the 20 years, I mean, there's lots and lots, hours and hours of stories, I'm sure, about different experiences and how we got through them. And you just did, you know, economies, divorces, all kinds of fun stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would love to hear you talk specifically about, you know, especially concerning the fact that we're in the COVID-19 crisis right now. I'm sure you probably had some similar troubles in the 2008 crisis.
I did.
More because your service, what you offer is not a need. It's not something that people, you know, have to keep the lights on. So I'm sure that, you know, when something happens and people are a little bit nervous about their money, you know, getting their car nice and pretty and making things look good is probably one of the first things that goes. So, you know, can you tell me a little bit about how you got through that situation and, you know, what you did to make sure that your business was able to survive that?
Well, I started my business in the first kind of recession, 2002. I don't know if you remember that, but I was very fortunate in the fact that I was so small that I really needed, you know, nothing to float. So I actually used that as an opportunity to kind of springboard unwittingly. I didn't know I was doing this at the time, but I look back and I was like, damn, you were really smart. And I was just stockpiling materials. I was going out and seeing every dealership I possibly could because I knew that other guys were hurting and I wasn't hurting. I wasn't feeling the pressure.
Right.
And so when 2003, 2004 came along, I was springboarded. And that's what obviously led me to have to get the brick and mortar because people were like, you can't take our cars to your garage. Like you need an actual building, you know? We love you, but you got to get a building. So then, you know, I built up to 2008. 2008, I had 6 employees, I think. I was still out in the shop doing majority of the custom work because by that time we were now fully doing wheels and tires, doing body kits. We were doing a lot of truly custom work. We were custom integrating radar laser jammer systems, doing a little bit of stereo stuff. We had a great shop that was doing most of it for us though. But a lot of truly custom stuff. And so I was still fully in charge of all that. So then 2008 comes along. I'm also going through a divorce in 2008. And then the economy kicks in and we go down to 1 employee. Wow. I can remember there being days where literally I'm picking up the phone, like, is there still a dial tone? Not because we didn't pay the bills, but because just nobody was calling. And you know, you're 100% correct in the fact that people that operate in this space, they don't need us, right? And when economic times get tough, people get cautious, just like you pointed out. The beautiful thing for us is that we had positioned ourselves into a niche of clients that were really, really great people. And so there was a group of them that just kind of kept us going. You know, they kind of had some stuff and, you know, they'd have us work on things. And again, I don't know how the hell we did it, but we made it through, right? And now, you know, fast forward again to COVID. I mean, yeah, we're definitely feeling the pinch. We were at 10 employees and, you know, things are definitely quiet, but we had so much momentum going into this. We came into 2020 almost debt-free. we're on track again to have a record year. I mean, things are looking so beautiful. I haven't been out in the shop physically for probably 5 or 6 years now. In that time, we've also opened a full sales division. So we have a dealership, if you will,
right?
Brokering and doing cars, and everything just comes to a crashing halt at the end of March, you know? And so if you want to talk about pivot points for a second, my pivot was that my guys were able to continue doing what needed to be done to keep the business operating, and so we could just kind of wind it down.
Yeah.
I sent my guys home for health reasons. I wanted to make sure that we didn't have anybody in any kind of harm's way, right? So I sent my guys home early to where I'm hoping we can bring them back early. And then I basically did what I've done with every single situation through 20 years is I started educating myself. What is this disease? How's it going to impact us? What are the financial implications? Who is out there talking about the financial implications? And how can I be at the front of this to make sure that we make it through this? Like, I have been through so much crap. There is no way that a virus that came out of China named after a Mexican beer is taking me out. It's not happening. So that's what I did. I just, every single day for the last month, it's been webinars, Zoom calls, conference calls. And what I did is I took all that information and I started compiling it. And I started putting it on my Instagram, and I changed my Instagram story from everyday, super motivational, super positive, here's some badass cars, right, to super motivational, super positive, but hey, here's some stuff you guys really need to pay attention to. If you are involved in business, please listen to me right now. And I got a pretty decent sized email list built up, and I just started forwarding information to everybody I knew. And it was cool because the community, the business community, really, really woke up over the last month. Yeah. I'm a member of EO. I don't know if you know, Entrepreneurs Organization. It's for business owners, and basically to sit and realize that you're not alone. Well, I tell you what, you realize that you weren't alone, and a lot of people have stepped up in a major, major way. So when you talk about being an entrepreneur and pivoting in times of crisis or need, man, this is probably going to be one of the greatest examples of that, I think, possibly ever. Well, maybe not the Great Depression aside. Sure. But it's really amazing to sit and watch everybody spring into action and come in aid. So I pivoted into helping everybody around me. And so it did put us at the front of the line. Our PPP is all in. We should get funding soon. We'll be up and operational. And then I'm going to need to pivot again to a fortune teller. I'm going to need to try to figure out, when is the economy going to start rolling again? Right. How do I make sure that my clients are back on board and going? And then what does the future of not only my business, but business in general look like? Because, I don't think it'll ever be the same, honestly, after this. So now it's time, I think more importantly, it's time for business owners to really look at what is the future of my business, and can I take this opportunity right now to clean out the cobwebs, restructure some things, look at the talent pool. The talent pool right now is going to be ridiculous. Right. So if you've ever wanted to change your things up a little bit, now's the time. So now that, we've kind of got ourselves to the PPP stage and the financial stage and all that kind of stuff, we feel good about that. Now we're going to start the conversation of now what, and help other business owners understand that now's the time to look, through a microscope at your business. What does the future of that business look like? So that was a really long-winded version of it. No, and it really resonates because, I was introduced to you through our mutual friend, John Michael Morgan. And in doing some research, I was asking him, what he knew about you or how long you guys had known each other. And one of the things he said about you is that you have a very, very strong mindset. And that's obvious to me, just hearing the way that you've talked about all the transitions and the challenges and, again, starting your own business off a single project in a BMW dealership. I would love to hear you just talk about how you think about mindset. I mean, is this something you've cultivated on purpose? Were you born this way? Is it something your dad beat into you? I mean, how do you build a strong mindset, and how are you managing it right now with everything that's going on? Well, I mean, I guess this is where the dark side of being an entrepreneur comes out. So, let's go all the way back to little Timmy, right? So I was adopted not once, but twice before I was 5 years old. Oh, wow. So my parents, the people who adopted me the second time, they are my parents, right? So I call them mom, I call them dad. They are my parents, My father was an engineer, worked for the U.S. government for 30 plus years. My mom was a homemaker, and then she worked at Kmart when I was a kid, and then she worked in banking for a while. So not only were neither one of them into cars, but neither one of them was into business at all. Like
Right.
they were just great, normal, people. I had a great childhood. No, physical trauma, sexual trauma, mental trauma, none of those types of things. But I did grow up in a household that wasn't super affectionate. So one of the things that John and I bond on is that we both kind of grew up not really knowing what love was from the way that we were needing to have it defined internally, right?
Right.
But much like John, I didn't find out about this till much, much later in life. And so, I had my own trials and tribulations growing up, was not the best student. I think also a lot like John, my parents thought I was either going to be a politician or a lawyer or somebody who used their mouth, right? So, again, I've been married twice, the financial crashes, these things, I've made financial mistakes, which cost me friendships, I took all that learning, and in 2012, I went through a really bad separation with my second wife. We were not divorced yet, but I went through a bad separation. And I realized I'm not really good at relationships. I'm really good at making our clients feel heard and seen and valued and safe and trusted, but I wasn't doing that in my own personal relationships. And so I discovered meditation, which if you were to say, Tim, you need to pin one thing, your success on one thing right now, hands down meditation, right? So if we go back to the conversation of mindset, did I have it? No, I didn't have it. Did I develop it? Yes, I developed it. How did I develop it? Literally by getting drugged through the sand. It wore down all the parts of me that were broken into a sharp point of knowing and defining who I wanted to be and where I want to go. So 2012, started meditating a lot. Really found that for me, I'm an anxious person, or I was an anxious person. Had a real short fuse. Was very, very, I was on my own box. This is the way it was going to be. Right. This is how we're going to do it. And that's why we were successful with business. Well, the edges started to kind of soften a little bit, from 2012 on. And then in 2017, I got my second divorce. When I went through that life event, I was like, okay, this is bullshit. Enough is enough. Like, something has to change. I wasn't happy. Clearly I wasn't being a good partner. But up till that time, it was always me not being able to see what my actions were doing to everything around me, my business, right, my friends, my personal relationships, these types of things. So I made a very conscious effort to take all of this stuff that I'd been reading, all of this stuff that I'd been feeling, all this transition I had going on inside me, I brought it out. And if you've ever talked to anybody or been around anybody who's done this, which I'm sure John has as well, it takes a lot of courage to shed all of those egos and begin to speak from a place of truth and to really speak about who you are. And part of that shedding is the people around you, your circle of influence, if you will, is going to start to peel away like layers, because there's a lot of people who are nowhere near beginning their own journey, and they don't understand and they don't see you anymore, right? You're no longer the Tim the cool car guy. Now you're this guru, wannabe, meditative, beard growing weirdo, like, oh right, God, right? So as the layers continued to get peeled back, I found myself getting lighter and lighter. I found my mindset getting stronger and stronger, because the people that were listening, the people that were sticking around, were people I genuinely wanted in my life. Not only that, but my business started doing better. I was attracting really amazing people. I was attracting amazing opportunities, and I wasn't letting the stress or anxiety or the day-to-day things just get to me anymore. So if you talk about mindset is 100% how you respond to any event in your life, period. And if you can get yourself to a point where, even the littlest things don't affect you greatly, you can find a way to navigate it. You're going to still have down days. I mean, John and I talk about depression a lot. I didn't realize how much I suffered from depression until I went through that second divorce. And my depression is what led a lot of that to collapse. And I didn't realize it. And now I can catch myself. I can feel myself starting to slide into that, not wanting to get out of bed, looking at all of the things that have happened in your past and compounding them. They become this big rock on your chest, and realizing that that's not real. Right. Those are past experiences that you no longer need to be defined by. And so taking all of those types of things into account, that's what's now led the new, face of our business and the way that we've gone. And then in the wake of what we're going through right now, I know a lot of business owners they're losing their damn minds.
Right.
They have no idea what to do. They have no idea where to turn. They've never been through this before. This is the time where people like myself, a lot of my friends, John, can step up and say, hey guys, we got you.
Right.
We got you. Come over here. Let us show you some things. And it's imperative for us to stay calm through these types of things to make sure that they get through there with us. So. Yeah,
it's so true. And there's so much wisdom in that. I hope that anybody listening will really, take to heart the idea that your mindset either gets strong by choice or it gets strong when the not having a strong mindset just becomes so painful that your only option is to grow.
Yeah, 100%.
There's so many people I talk to, especially like people in the military and people that just done hard stuff. It's like, wow, they have such a strong mindset. It's like, yeah, because they've been in a lot of pain before. Like, yeah, they had to cope with some really atrocious or awful stuff, and that's how you get a strong mindset. So that's super.
I think looking at all the people that that I admire, books I've read, people I follow, I don't honestly think any one of those people is someone that was just like, I think I want a different mindset.
Right.
I think every single one of those people, and the reason probably I associate with them, is that there was an event that was, there was the catalyst. It changed them. They were like, okay, I don't want to live like this anymore. And so when I talk to people, and I have a little group of guys that will reach out to me and say, hey, I've got this I need to work on. The first thing I ask them to do is stop. What is the root of what you're thinking about? And is what you're thinking about or what is consuming you right now, does it really matter? Or are you just making a bigger deal out of it? And it's amazing to watch them go, oh, actually, it really doesn't matter. Okay, take that off the table. What's the next thing? And you get them into this process of, like one of the biggest questions I get is, how do you meditate? If I don't know if you follow me yet on social media, but every day there's something in the morning that I put on social media after I spend about 20 to 40 minutes meditating every morning. And there's always something that just comes to me. And it's not some weird vision, it's just something that just after everything clears away, that's what's there. And so I just put it out there. And it's amazing the conversations that then get sparked by just a couple words. And the number one question is, how do you meditate? I can't stop my brain. I can't stop my mind. And my answer is you don't need to stop your mind. You just need to quit telling it stories. And when you quit telling it stories, what's left that's what you need to focus on. Those are the things you need to work on. Those are the things you need to work through. And it's great to watch some of these guys going all the way back to mindset. It's great to watch these guys change and be able to become so much more clear about what they are, who they are, or how they're doing it. And then the most important part is finally being able to be sick of your own shit, right? And be able to admit that you're tired of living that way. Right. And then watching that shift in people is a huge amount of value. So.
Yeah, so true. And that I relate to that so much because I specifically, I'm thinking in my own marriage, the problems that I've had in my marriage that have been of my own doing, but like you're saying, the stories I've been telling myself 10 to 1.
Yeah.
Where there's actually a problem versus me just creating a narrative in my head about this problem that is just, it's just
not real.
It's not exactly. It's my perspective. It's not fact. She sees it a completely different way. I mean, it just is, it's like unbelievable. And when you finally are like kind of awoken to that, it's like, oh my gosh, it's you're just like, you stop being an idiot, man. Like, what?
Well, when I started to land on that, and I've gone through these different cycles of where, oh, okay. Oh shit. All these things, all of a sudden you realize you're like, damn it, that was my fault. Where I'm at now is realizing that a lot of the things that happened to me when I was a child have created these walls and ruts and
Yep.
blockades that I didn't realize I had before. And it has nothing to do with my parents being good parents or bad parents. In my mind, they're amazing parents.
Right.
I mean, my father's, he's my greatest hero, right? But I also realized that my parents were only working with the tools that they had, and they also were broken.
Right.
Of course, they're from a generation that will never, ever admit it or work on it.
Tell me
But,
about
you know, but when you change the lens that you look at your own, your own environment from, it's incredible how much grace all of a sudden you have at everything around you. Like this whole situation right now. I mean, you literally could collapse and fold and just be like, I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
Or you could just understand that it's all going to work out somehow, some way, and just keep pushing and keep doing what you need to do. And, so it's amazing how that journey continues. And I don't think, I don't know. Do you know who Michael Singer is?
I don't think so.
So Michael Singer wrote a book. He wrote 2 books, one called The Untethered Soul and one called The Surrender Experiment. If you ever get a chance and you really want to dive into your head, I highly, highly, highly recommend these books. The first chapter of The Untethered Soul literally punched me in the chest. And it was what you and I were just talking about. It was the voice in our head and how it literally is our worst friend ever. And he explains it like, if you were sitting on a park bench with your best friend and your best friend was telling you the same shit you're telling yourself, you would tell him to shut up, right? You'd shove him off the bench. Like, come on, So why can't you do that for yourself?
Right.
And I was like, damn it, he's so right. And so, but one of the things I loved about reading Michael Singer is that this journey never ends. And I feel that from a business perspective, if you start to look at your business the same way you look at yourself and the journey that it's in, it's never going to end. It's going to continue to evolve until you either sell it or you're done, right?
Right.
And I think that takes a lot of pressure off of guys as well too. So when young guys ask me, what's your number one piece of advice? My number one piece of advice is don't sweat it. Just stick to your plan and go. So.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned grace, because I've noticed that the more I've become aware of these things in myself and realized, some of these bad habits and the narratives that I'm creating, the more compassion I do have for other people, especially people who are negative, like trolls on the internet. Like I just have another level of like, that person does not like themselves. It's not even about me. And I just, it's like, it creates a whole nother level of empathy for me to be able to get on somebody's level and just kind of understand like, yep, I get it. I've been there.
Interesting exercise for me over the last 12 months has been, I had a financial situation that blew up in my face. I handled it incorrectly and it caused me to lose a group of friends. Now the group of friends I lost because they never asked for clarification. And I learned that I don't need to give clarification, right? The catalyst in the group, the person who I had the issue with, he then proceeded to create a fake account on social media and start to basically attack all my posts and attack all this stuff. This kid thinks he's a guru. He's broke. He has no idea how to run a business. He runs business day to day. And I was getting really mad. I was getting really pissed off about this. And I was like, I'm going to find out who this is. I mean, I already knew who it was, but I'm like, And then all of a sudden I was like, you know what? Hold on. Let's go and let's look at these posts. Okay. Here's a post says, this guy's so insecure. Yeah, no, you're right. I am. Okay. All right. Okay. This guy doesn't know how to run a business. Yeah, that's actually pretty true too. Yeah, no, you're right. This guy, I kept looking at these things this person was saying, and I'm like, it actually kind of made me feel bad for this person that they have the time to do this, and then B, that the worst things that they can say about me are the truth. And I changed my tune. So I think not feeding it made it go away. Every once in a while it pops up. But when it does, I literally find myself laughing and just showing the whole situation grace. Because I'm like, if this person actually really had a message, they wouldn't be hiding behind a veil,
right?
Which really says more about them than it says about me. And then the things that they're trying to use to undercut me are all ego-based things that don't serve me anymore. So it's totally fine. So, you know, when you talk about showing grace, man, I tell you what, it was the greatest example and practice of my entire life. And ever since that event where I was just like, I'm just going to break this down. Every single thing that comes at me that I start to feel myself peak on, I go, wait, let's look at it. Let's dissect it. Nope, doesn't matter. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
Grace is honestly the greatest way to live so many different things. You know, like you go back to your marriage, you're talking about your marriage. I wish in my second marriage, I would have shown my wife so much more grace. But I was still at the point where I had to be right. And unfortunately, she was the type of young lady that always had to be right. So it was just this, you know, these two rocks clanking against each other. I just wish I would have shown more grace. So, yeah, it's a good example.
Yeah, that's awesome. Super powerful lesson. So speaking of gurus, I'm just kind of curious, Insert Guru Here. Yeah. That's like a podcast. I'd love to hear you talk about that and kind of where that came from and why you decided to put your energy there.
So when I started going through the second divorce, really heavily into meditation, I got into a really, really, really dark spot because I realized I'd failed again. I felt like everything around me was kind of closing in. A lot of days I didn't get out of bed. I mean, it was a really bad spot for me, you know, but I noticed through going through the meditation and doing the reading, I just noticed that every time I'd pick up a book or listen to a meditation and just sit with myself, I could feel myself opening.
Right. And
so then I would start to post things about it. And I've been posting, you know, positive stuff since 2012. I mean, this isn't like a new thing. I was just like, hey, I'm going to go do this. I mean, it's been a long time that I've been in this mind, you know, developing this mindset. And as I started to get feedback on the post and the growth and people saying, hey, I can see you growing, it fed me. I mean, I would like to say it's probably not narcissistically, but it felt good that people were seeing that I was growing, and it felt good to be growing. Right. So I just kept going and kept doing it. And then, one of the posts was what this guy was like, this guy's not a guru. He's a dipshit. He doesn't know anything. And I'm like, you know what? I think you're wrong. And I'm not saying that I'm a guru. I'm saying that we all have a guru inside of us. Mm-hmm. And it just takes a couple key combinations to get it to open up. And so I was like, insert guru here. And of course, my first go-to is I go straight to Network Solutions and Google it, right? Oh, is that already a website? And it wasn't. And I was like, okay. So I started it. I started the page. I started kind of doing some work with it. And I haven't gone very far with it yet, though. But I think that's going to be Tim 2.0.
Yeah.
John's actually been helping me a lot with that. You know, I do get a lot of value from the people that I talk to and the way that my own life journey can help them change. I don't want to tell you what to do. I don't want to come on and podcast and be like, you need to do this and you need to do this. I really get a lot of value from the people that come on and say, hey, this is how I got kicked in the junk and this is how I got out of it, right? And this is how I how I transitioned in that. So Insert Guru Here really is an opportunity for people to take other people's failures and stories, implement them into their own lives, and then hopefully grow from that. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And to just help you justify the fact that it's not narcissistic, I think there's because I've experienced something similar in my own life. I think there's a level of freedom that most people don't get to experience when you are just being authentically yourself, like just not even judging yourself, trying not to be sensitive to other people's judgment and just being who you are. It's a different kind of freedom that you get to experience there. And especially when it's well received, I think that almost feels better than somebody being like, hey, great job at 503. You're like, that's just kind of this thing I do. But people like are really resonating with you and how you show up. It's a great feeling.
The word authentic is a tough one right now, because if you listen to, I mean, literally, if you listen to any one of these self-help guys right now, right? And there are many that I love. I absolutely admire them so deeply. But the word authentic and authenticity it's used so much now that I don't even think that people understand what that means.
Yeah.
And I think it's just living genuinely. I don't need to impress anybody. I don't really care what people think about me. Not in a shitty way. Like, sure, I don't care what you think, but like, I'm not going to let that, impact me. And waking up each day with the intent of just doing the best you can. You know, I think socially, And social media is, you know, a humongous problem, in my opinion, with this. Socially, we all think we have to be something else. You know, we have to look a certain way. We have to drive a certain car. We have to, you know, have the perfect house, the perfect wife, the perfect kids. The happiest people I know have none of that.
Right.
They have none of that. They have very nice lives. But they're not worried about any of it. They don't care. And that was a really big separation point for me, because my business is surrounded by people that's what they want. They want the visual. They want the hot car. They want the beautiful wife. They want the amazing house, right? These guys work really, really hard to get those things. So now I'm in this weird juxtaposition of, okay, I still want to service these people and take care of them the best I possibly can and give them the highest quality service, product, and installations. But I don't also fully resonate with the lifestyle that they live. So it's been an interesting journey, kind of removing myself from that a little bit while still being able to keep the brand image high.
Yeah.
So still in process.
I'm glad you brought that up. And I'm curious to hear you talk about this, because when I watched some of the videos, a lot of them are very artistic. And I understand that could just be the videographer and kind of their thing. But there also seems to be that same element to the design and the work that you guys do. And so I'd love to hear you talk about, you know, when you're doing these designs and you're doing this custom work, I mean, is it just like, hey, we want to have nice things, or is this like an artistic expression for you or your team or whoever is doing it?
It's definitely an artistic expression. I mean, we have a group of clients that will walk in and just be like, hey, I want to put some wheels on a car. Okay, well, Ian Gordon, who's my right-hand man, he's been with me for about 12 years now. He actually handles almost all the sales now, which is great. But we spend a lot of time with people. We're not just a tire store or something like that where you just walk in and pick something off the wall and walk, you know what I mean? Like, more times than not, our clients become our friends. Like, most of my closest friends all started out as clients. Well, it's also because I live here pretty much 24 hours a day and there's nowhere else to go. But so when you come in here, another thing about our business I realize is that we're not just in the automotive aesthetic business. We are fully in the relationship business. Yeah. So going all the way back to the beginning of our conversation where I said there's those two different groups, right? In the middle of those groups is the relationship business. And that's what we fully are in. And it just so happens that we also do really rad stuff to cars. Yeah. But artistically, everything that we've ever designed or done has always been, you know, me at the kind of header guiding the way I need it to be. The videos, for the most part, except for some of the new stuff, has pretty much been guided by me. This is what I'd like to see. This is how I need it to go. Right. I don't know why. I don't know why I want it to look this way. I don't know why I need it to be this way. I'm not a videographer. I just take what I'm given and I organize it into what I think looks the most badass. And then people seem to like it. So that's what we do. But it is 100% an aesthetic thing. I mean, we've got clients that will walk in and want, you know, they'll show us a picture. We want to do this. No, you really don't. And we just kind of help steer them into the, you know, the right direction to make sure that what we do is just unique and a little bit different than what everyone else is doing. So, but then you couple that with amazing service and then really quality work that's being done. I mean, we have a humongous book of repeat business. So we don't do any advertising at all. None.
That's awesome.
So.
And I'd be curious if you could speak to it, and maybe I'm sure you've had these conversations, so I'd just love to hear what you have to say. But from the client perspective, somebody comes in and they want this just really awesome looking tricked out car. Right. In general, what is the motivation there? Because I could just sort of hear somebody listening to this and thinking about, oh, high-end exotic cars, like, you know, what scarcity mindset, what a waste, or who needs that? Or, you know, these people are just so superficial. It's like, what is the motivation for somebody when they come in and they really just want that perfect, like, tailor-made car for themselves?
Well, I mean, I think there's definitely a large portion of it that is a materialistic, you know, ego-fueled. I mean, you know, we're dudes. We love loud exhaust, screeching tires, you know, beautiful designs. I mean, that is just inherently going to be there. There's nothing you can do to change that portion of it. But I think when it comes to what they want to do, it's just personal expression. You know, they'll see something, and I mean, I would say 90% of the people that we deal with will come in with a vision in their head that they've seen somewhere. Right. We try to help them take it a little bit further away from that. yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the biggest motivating factor is that people just want to be different. They want to be, they want to individualistic.
Yeah.
Is that it? Okay.
If it's not, we'll make it one.
We did. We just now. Yeah. They just want their own. They just want their own brand at the same time. So that's why I think majority of our business we deal again with tastemakers, designers, CEOs, a lot of entrepreneurs, sports figures, and it's because they are so focused on making the money to do this stuff that they want to go somewhere where that money is going to be well spent, respected, and the result's going to be better than they expected. I used to tell people my favorite thing in the world about my business was working with a client, getting all the work done. And this is when I did all the work, right? Getting all the work done, being tired as hell, wiped out, making a deadline. The customer would come in to get the car, and the look on their face when they would see what you created, this vision, because I can picture it in my head. They can't. Yeah. They're two-dimensional, right? So they're like, God, I thought it was going to look good, but oh man. And that used to give me chills, literally used to give me chills. And that's what, kept us fueled. But it's people just wanting to bring something alive. Yeah. And they want to bring it alive with people that can understand their vision, get them excited about it, and then treat them well. So go all the way back to the beginning of our conversation of why I started my company.
Yeah.
I wasn't treated well. I didn't feel good about the situation, and I wasn't made to feel like I mattered in the equation at all.
Yeah, and it seems like from listening to you talk that's kind of inspired a lot of what you're doing with social media and InsertGuruHere, and I'd like to talk about that. I have kind of just a tactical question. I'm really curious for somebody who for so many years did all the work themselves. How do you get to the point where you hire for that? Like, how do you hire that eye for detail and the art? I'm so curious how you built a team that's able to replace you on the shop floor.
Well, first and foremost, if you go back to my hiring story, right? I have always hired off of personality. I hired off how you made me feel, right? Mm-hmm. So I would love if you came to me with all these crazy qualifications, but if you came to me with crazy qualifications and you were just a dick, I'm sorry, you can't work here. Like, not this environment. But if you came to me with enough tools that I can help you from there, or you came with the qualifications and you just seem like a good human, right? We had a good rapport, we had a good conversation, our goals are aligned. I want you to work for me. So I am very blessed to, over the years, had amazing employees. Not always. There's definitely been some bad apples, but I listen to horror stories from some of my other business owner friends. I truly am blessed to have some amazing people on my team. But it took a long time to pry me out of there. And we definitely don't do as crazy or deep of custom stuff as we used to do, just because, so kind of a control freak, I guess, when it comes to that.
Right.
But also cars, the technology has changed so much too that it's just a lot harder to pull off some of those things. But the guy that I finally allowed, Aaron Cole, the guy that I finally allowed to kind of take over that side of it, and once and for all, I had to make a decision: stay in the shop and hire someone to run the business, or go and run the business and find someone to be in the shop.
Yeah.
At this point, I'd been at it for probably 12 years, I guess. Well, Aaron's been here 6, so 14 years. I was pretty tired. I was really tired of being out of the shop, getting dirty all the time. And so I made the decision. I'm going to go and I'm going to run the front, and we're going to find someone. And so it just, again, I didn't make a plan. It just kind of happened. And it was me changing my mindset to, I'm going to run this business, and there's a hole that's got to be filled. Right. And so there was definitely some bumps and bruises and some, some nut kicking, but Aaron is still here. He's still with me. And, alongside him, we've had multiple people throughout the years that have taken up the reins. And we've got, one of the guys that I stole from the dealership is still with me. He's been with me for 13 years. He's my lead paint protection installer. And the biggest thing for me is that no one will ever do the work the way you did it. No one will ever do it as efficiently as you did it. Of course, this is my story I'm telling myself in my head, right?
Yeah.
But that, I think, is where also a lot of business owners get in their way, their ego, right? And not ego from like a, hey, but an ego from like, I've got to keep doing it or it won't get done correctly.
Yeah.
Got to back away from that, right? So I always tell my guys, we have, there's a 70% rule. The reason that people love doing business with 503 motoring companies is because we don't subscribe to the 70% rule. And the 70% rule is that most people are okay with 70%. 70% quality, 70% service, 70% whatever, right? We're 95. And if we're not 95, I damn sure want to know about it because it needs to be 95.
Right.
And that is just, again, going all the way back to why I started the business. It just wasn't being done the way that it needed to be done, right? And I look at so many different industries now that could just be so much better with a few little tiny tweaks of that mythology. 70% rule. Remember it.
I have so many thoughts. So one, you mentioned earlier about just being I'm going to try to get to them. We'll see if I remember all of them. You mentioned being a good human. That is like, if that's my highest level compliment for somebody. If I say he's a good human being, like that for me sums up everything that goes into that whole idea. So I love that you brought that up. The hiring piece, I can totally relate to that. And what I learned in my own experience was that as long as I focused on managing methods, I was going to be frustrated because nobody had the exact same methods that I had. Right. But if I just manage outcomes and like, hey, like you said, 95%, I just want 95%. This is what right looks like.
Yep.
I don't care how you get there. It made my life so much easier. I mean, suddenly I just was able to let go and, sure enough, the results are there and everything gets managed just fine.
And it's also learning to kind of relax a little bit too, because we got it down to a process where they would give it what they thought was 95%. And then they'd pull the car up front for me to inspect it. And it was like 87%.
Yeah.
So then we school's in session. Okay.
Right.
The only way you're going to get to 95% is if I show you the delta between what you think is 95 and what I think is 95. Now the problem is that most times they're never going to actually hit 95. Right.
Sure.
But if you can get them to 92, that's still so much more than 70%. Right. So you're still winning. And again, as a business owner, it's learning to just kind of relax a tiny bit, that it doesn't always have to fit perfectly, which is tough because it really does.
Right. Yeah. So. And you mentioned the 70% rule, and that's like, I'm sure there's a narrative that I'm telling myself, but these are the situations where I get really, really mad, is when I deal with a company who just is just checking the block on customer service or quality or something. I mean, it just, because in my mind, even if you're a frontline customer service rep, it's just not that hard to go a little bit further. Or if I had a dime for every time a customer service rep has come back to me and asked me to do some research, it's like, just, you have access to all of that information. Like, it just would have cost you nothing to go get it and come back and say, here's what I found. Here's what you need to do. It just, man,
my biggest pet peeve is when you ask somebody a question, you're dealing with it, insert any kind of business here. You ask them a question and you can tell they don't know, but they keep talking. The greatest thing you can do is, I don't have the answer to that, but I'm going to go get it for you.
Right.
It might take me a little bit longer to get the answer, but the answer is going to be much closer than the answer you're about to give me.
Yeah.
And that, again, is that ego piece. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, any business owners listening, just don't be those people. That's all I can say about that. So it's come up a few times, and I was looking through some of your social media, and I'm going to read a quote. So you had this on your Instagram and your Facebook. The lessons we learn from our actions are endless. I would love to hear you talk about that. And there's another one on your Facebook page, and I thought, really, sometimes it's to your advantage for people to think you're crazy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So the first one, the lessons we learn from our actions are endless. So I don't know if anyone else has ever said that, right? I don't know if I plagiarized it or if I legitimately did come up with that, but I wrote that on my Facebook page in 2012. That has literally been my tag on Facebook since I think 2012, maybe 2014, but I think 2012. And the reason I wrote that is because I was looking at the way that I was growing and transitioning from all the things I had screwed up. And I'm thinking, man, if we really just looked at again, going back to that whole, when you're finally sick of your own shit, like when you look at that bowl of shit and you go, oh, this is what I learned. Oh, this is what I learned. Oh, that was a good one. Ooh, yeah. Right? You are your greatest teacher. Fast forward to InsertGuruHere. It's all there. It's already all inside of us. We literally have already made all the mistakes we need to make. We just need to look at the mistakes and see what the lesson was. And then remove the ego and understand that there's another way. So that one is really powerful to me because it, I've got on the back of my door here, I've got all these quotes that through the years have meant something to me, or things in books that I've read. And so I'll read them, as I walk out the door. But that one in particular is probably the most powerful one to me. Just because if people would stop and just take a second to look at their own infallibility and lack thereof, like, I think that, oh man, so people's lives would be so much easier. You're going back to that salesman, right? If he could just understand that you just need to be a little bit nicer, right? Your life would be so much easier.
Right.
And then the other one, if you think about it, think about when you were younger. Who's the one guy you didn't mess with, right? The crazy dude. The guy that sat over there with like 6 cartons of milk and just minded his own business, but was like, a little off, right? You didn't mess with that guy. So I think that sometimes people that are too confident or too worried about what everyone thinks, those are the ones that are the easiest to break. They're the ones that are the first ones that are going to crater when catastrophe hits. But it's the crazy ones, that just might make a difference. So that's a newer one, and I did not write that one. Somebody else wrote that one, but I posted it a few times because it seems to resonate with me. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. I love that. And there's another quote out there, and I'm going to butcher it. It's basically, all progress depends on the irrational man. The rational man conforms to the world. The irrational man forces the world to conform to him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I actually just posted that a few weeks ago.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So you're obviously, and I share a similar belief about the, I guess the benefit of reflecting and learning the lessons from the mistakes you made. It's kind of the mistakes aren't necessarily in vain unless you don't learn the lessons.
Right.
And if you continue to make it better, and I even project that onto my kids, I would hope that my kids won't make my mistakes because I did a good enough job educating them on the lessons and carrying that forward. I'd love to hear you talk about how you think about impact and contribution. Because it seems obvious that you want to put information out there to help people and to make things better. I'm just curious to hear you talk about how you think about those two things.
I think if you go back to your point of being a good human, right? That resonated with you when I said that. So to me, being a good human is that guy that is able to look at his mistakes and find the value in those and then learn from those. And then transferring that to other people. To me, that's what a good human is. It's somebody who it's not somebody who pretends to be good. It's not somebody who, when someone's looking, helps an old lady across the road. It's the guy that doesn't even know anyone's watching and picks up a piece of trash, which is a huge pet peeve of mine, by the way, trash.
Yeah.
It's taking what we've learned and putting it back. So I'm a father as well, too. I have 3 kids. And, I struggle with being a single father and how they're being raised. But then I'll see them do something and I'll be like, damn it, they're such good humans.
Right.
Like, okay, I did my job. So back to your point, though, I think it really is taking our life experiences and being able to impart them upon other people that may be going through similar struggles and helping them see the light of day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I resonate with all of that. Man, it's been so good talking to you. We've covered a lot of ground. I hope everybody's able to pull all the value out of this. There are so many lessons in here that I hope everybody will get value from. I'd love to hear you just, share whatever you want to share with the audience in terms of how to connect with you, where you want them to look you up or how to find you, anything in particular you want them to do. And then I have one final question and we'll wrap up.
Sure. Easiest for me is just 503 Tim on Instagram. I spend most of my time on there. I'm not on Snapchat, other stuff. I am on Facebook as Tim Walbridge, but I don't really do a ton on there. I find Instagram is the easiest way to engage or interact. Or if you want to, look up my company's 503motoring.com. And then if you, want to go and check out InsertGuruHere, it's also on Instagram. It's not really much there yet, but I promise you that that'll be coming as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I'll post all the links to that stuff in the show notes so everybody can find you. I may even post some videos to some of your car videos, just
great.
There are links to the car videos because some of them are just really cool to watch.
What was your favorite one?
I like the video with Akira Nakai.
Oh yeah, Nakai. Sure. Yeah.
So cool. I mean, it's a very short video, but it's like the way you talked about him, it was so fascinating to see this guy just comes in, sits down, smokes a cigarette, looks at a car, and then just goes to work. It's I would love to just have a projector into his mind and know what was he looking at? What was going on in his brain? And
that guy, I've been so honored to be at 7 different builds like my own. And I've been to 3 different continents. I mean, it's just watching the guy. I was just actually in January, I was just actually at his headquarters, hanging out for they have the Japanese New Year. They call RWB New Year, big party. And yeah, I mean, the guy is just so study worthy. I mean, you could literally just sit and stare and wonder what is going on in his head now. But he just, yeah, he's great. You
mentioned in the video that he only brought one of everything
that's it. Yeah.
There was no mistakes that were going to be made.
Did you see in the video where he pours out the can and he's going through the can?
Yes. Yeah.
So the can is just filled with like, I mean, all of our dads had like the can in the garage, right? With all the stuff. I mean, I have one. I'm sure you have one now. He's got his can, and this can just travels with him around the world, and he just pours it out, and okay. And it's incredible. I mean, that thing is such a piece of art, but the honor of being able to be part of that whole thing, I mean, really, there's not words that can describe it fully, and it's something that will be with me for the rest of my life. So,
yeah, no, it's a cool video. I'll post a link to it so everybody can check that out.
Great.
Tim, it's been great talking to you. I want to be respectful for your time. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I just want to wrap up. The last question, it's kind of related to the one we talked about before with impact and contribution, but what does legacy mean to you?
Ooh, man. At 45 years old, legacy definitely means something different to me than it did when I was younger. When I was younger, I thought legacy was like, how much shit can I leave behind? And, how much, legacy to me is, what is your impact? What kind of good human are you? I had an exercise, and I don't know if John's had you know about this one, but it was to write your own eulogy, right? I can't do it. I told John, I'm sorry, I can't do this exercise because I'm not done yet. I don't know what that is. But I think for me, my definition of legacy would be, what do they say about me when I'm gone? Not from an egotistical way or a narcissistic way, but did I do enough good while I was here to really imprint into other people what being a good human is about?
That's awesome.
And that includes my kids, my family, my employees. I mean, that's all encompassing. So
yeah. I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing it. Tim, it's been great talking to you, man. I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.